Hey, this is Pastor Bunjee Garrett, and I want to take some time today to present you with another word of encouragement. Now, just in case you missed it, you might like to know that it was just last week when a group of scientists, they officially announced that the Doomsday Clock will remain set at 90 seconds till midnight. Just to be clear, it'll help you to know that the Doomsday Clock was created by a group of scientists just 2 years after the first atomic weapons were developed back in the 40s. And in light of that horrific development, well, we shouldn't be surprised to learn that midnight on this doomsday clock, it's designed to serve as a contemporary idiom of a nuclear disaster, which would then result in the apocalyptic day of doom. Well, it was last January. That's when the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists set the doomsday clock to 90 seconds until midnight. And now here we are a year later, and the same group of scientists have decided to keep the doomsday clock set at the very same time. And to that I must ask, really? Really? Seriously? Are you not paying attention to everything that's been happening in the world over the last year? Well, here's the statement that they use to explain why they are keeping the time set at 90 seconds to midnight. And I quote them here. Today, we once again set the doomsday clock at 90 seconds to midnight because humanity continues to face an unprecedented level of danger. Our decision should not be taken as a sign that the international security situation has eased. Instead, leaders and citizens around the world should take this statement as a stark warning and respond urgently as if today were the most dangerous moment in modern history, because it may well be. Wow. From this, we can see that the current setting of the doomsday clock, that being 90 seconds till midnight, is supposed to serve as a warning to the world that we're precariously close to the day of our destruction. And while I appreciate this group of scientists who are attempting to warn us about the day of doom, what they're failing to realize is that the world is much worse off than it was when they set the time to 90 seconds till midnight back in 2023. To prove my point, I want to consider the events that led the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists to keep the doomsday clock set at 90 seconds until midnight. They based their decision on four main categories, which include these: the many dimensions of nuclear threat, the ominous climate change outlook, evolving biological threats, and the dangers of disruptive technologies like AI. Now, according to their research, all four categories present us with a reason to think that they should keep the doomsday clock set at 90 seconds until midnight, just like they did last year. And yet, as we consider these four categories and what's been happening over the last year, well, there should be no doubt that the clock should be advanced forward at least by 10 seconds. For example, let's take the four categories that they presented in their report. And as we work backwards through the list, we're going to begin with the dangers of disruptive technologies like AI. Now, according to their report, and I quote them here, AI is one of the most significant technological developments in the last year, involved the dramatic advance of generative artificial intelligence. The apparent sophistication of chatbots based on large language models such as ChatGPT led some respected experts to express concern about existential risks arising from further rapid advancements in the field. That's right. There are many in the field who are extremely concerned about the rapid development and rapid advancement of AI. For example, AI could be used to magnify media disinformation. And not only that, but AI can also corrupt the information environment on which democracy depends. And as the military continues to utilize AI technology, well, we can be certain that there will be those militaries in the world who begin to employ lethal autonomous weapons which identify and destroy targets without any human intervention. Now, with that being the case, listen, the militaries who decide to put AI in control of important physical systems like nuclear weapons, well, they could indeed pose a direct existential threat to humanity. And on this factor alone, the time on the doomsday clock ought to be advanced forward at least 10 seconds in comparison to last year. The second category that I want to consider, as we continue working backwards on this list, has everything to do with evolving biological threats. Now, according to their research, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, they presented us with the following statement, and I quote, "We highlight one issue of special concern: the convergence of emerging artificial intelligence tools and biological technologies may radically empower individuals to misuse biology." Now, as we consider this concern, in light of the reality that COVID-19 was created through gain-of-function research in the lab, We should be extremely concerned about the advancement of AI coupled together with biological threats, and especially as we consider how the WHO keeps warning us about some unknown disease X while simultaneously pushing their pandemic agenda, which would give them total control over every participating nation. This ought to be of great concern to every single person. Without debate, the time on the Doomsday Clock should have been advanced by at least 10 seconds when compared to what was happening last year. And listen, this is true even if we dismiss their category of climate change. Now, according to the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, the climate is changing. I know it's shocking. But here's how they put it, and I quote them. The world in 2023 entered uncharted territory as it suffered its hottest year on record, and global greenhouse gas emissions continue to rise. Both global and North Atlantic sea surface temperatures broke records, and Antarctic sea ice reached its lowest daily extent since the advent of satellite data. Wow. According to them, global greenhouse gas emissions continues to rise. And this despite the fact that there are more electric cars and more windmills being used than ever before. And it's almost like humans have little to no effect on the climate. Now, as we consider this claim that the world has entered uncharted territory as it suffers its hottest year on record, it's important for us to realize that the overall measured temperature shows no clear trend over the last century of it, really rising out of control. So, are we really entering into uncharted territory? Well, not according to the evidence. As for the data, you should know that the NOAA statisticians, they adjust the data using complex statistical models. And according to one report, there's evidence that helps us to see how they actually change the data to reflect their underlying theories of global warming. It's also interesting to note that it was last August when more than 1,600 scientists from all over the world, they gathered together and signed the World Climate Declaration, which assures us that there is no climate emergency. And yet, despite the data, the climate change conspiracy theorists still insist upon blocking traffic and vandalizing works of art and these sorts of things. Oh, and I should also direct your attention to the recent Harvard study, which was published in Nature on January the 15th. And according to this study, the effects of climate change on public health will be one of the most important interventions and factors for consideration in addressing the association between mental health and climate change. More simply put, the false prophets of the climate change cult are literally driving people insane with the fears of mass extinction. And the proof of this can be seen in the decisions made by those who go out and sit in the middle of the street as they block traffic, all in the name of ending the production of oil. Meanwhile, the vehicles that are sitting there idling are burning more oil than they would have had they been able to just go on about their merry way. This is just absolutely insane. Listen, there's no scientific reason for the Bulletin's Science and Security Board to factor in climate change to their Doomsday Clock setting. And yet, seeing how they did, and being that they would have us to believe that the world's entered into uncharted territory as it suffers the hottest year on record, well, then wouldn't it make sense then for them to advance the time on their Doomsday Clock by at least 10 seconds? And yet they didn't. Well, listen, the final factor, which was the first on their list, it has to do with the many dimensions of nuclear threat. And according to their own research, the Bulletin's Science and Security Board was quick to confess, and I quote here, nuclear spending programs in the three largest nuclear powers, China, Russia, and the United States, threaten to trigger a three-way nuclear arms race as the world's arms control architecture collapses. Russia and China are expanding their nuclear capabilities, and pressure mounts in Washington for the United States to respond in kind. That's right. We're currently, on the brink of some sort of third world war as Russia, China, and Iran join together to overthrow American hegemony. And the same group of scientists also referred to the Iranians who continue to stonewall the International Atomic Energy Agency as they simultaneously prepare weapons-grade uranium for their nuclear arsenal. And at the same time, we're also watching Pakistan continuing to expand their nuclear capabilities. And it was just 2 weeks ago when Pakistan carried out military strikes on separatist targets in Iran following the deadly attacks that was implemented by Tehran. Oh, and let's not forget about the way that things have been escalating there in the land of Israel after the government of Gaza attacked the civilians of southern Israel. And as we consider the evidence that this invasion was funded by not only Iran, but also the UN, there should be no doubt that this battle will escalate into a wider Middle Eastern conflict, especially as Hezbollah and Jordan and these surrounding groups continue to take part in this attack on Israel. And yet, despite all of this, the Bulletin's Science and Security Board, they failed to advance the setting on their doomsday clock by any measure of time. And yet things are clearly worse than they were back in 2023. And with all that being the case, listen, I have no doubt that they are completely unfamiliar with the biblical prophecies that are currently being fulfilled. This includes the prophecies that we find in Psalm 83, Isaiah 17, as well as Ezekiel 38. And as I consider all of these end-time prophecies, well, it seems clear to me that we're watching the world being prepared for the time of tribulation. And so regardless of what time it is on the doomsday clock, I encourage you, let's pay attention to biblical prophecy, especially those that pertain to end-time events. And with this as our focus, let's seek the strength of our Savior, Jesus Christ, so that by his power, we can continue to fight the good fight of faith and all for the glory of God.